it is time for another Brand Swan Live. I am the person whose face you see entirely too often, Jen Wells, co-founder of Brand Swan, and I'm going to be interviewing Michelle McCann today to talk about non-traditional businesses. So if you're the kind of person who has a business where people say, what is that? Or can you actually make money doing that? Then this will be a great conversation for you to tune into, because we're going to talk about things that are career choices that are a little harder to explain, and also the idea that you can monetize your passion even if it's not a typical industry. So let me talk a little bit about Michelle. Michelle is a truly awesome human being. First of all, I got to know Michelle because she was a client of my business partner, but I'm so glad I did. And I am a huge, huge skeptic. So when we got into the area of like angel readings and the divine, I was always like, I don't know about this. But I have actually experienced an angel reading with Michelle right now. And I can tell you, no matter what you believe, there is only value to be had from this experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some other projects Michelle is working on, and then just in general, her career choices and overcoming obstacles. So with that said, Michelle, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, introduce yourself so people can stop looking at my face.
Oh, sure. So I'm Michelle McCann, and I'm an author and divine channel is the title that Archangel Michael gave me. So that's what I go by now. I give spiritual readings and guidance and coaching, and I teach workshops and things of that nature to help people have divine guidance in their life and to connect with the angels and their spirit team, and with the hope of helping them live the life of their dreams and to find comfort and peace in difficult times. So I have a history, which my history is a little non-traditional. You wouldn't think of, someone who had been 16 years in banking as doing this type of profession, but I was 16 years with MBNA and Bank of America. And then I also have a licensed clinical social worker, the clinical social work license, and I have my master's in social work and worked in social work for 11 years. So I have kind of a varied background.
Okay, so we're going to start with the basics for the people who, like me, didn't have a lot of exposure to this. But can you elaborate a little bit on what a divine channel is?
Sure. So it's funny, like I said, Archangel Michael gave me that title, and I'm like, okay, I'll call myself that if you tell me to, but I'm not really sure what that means. And so really what that means is that I receive information from the spirit realms. It started primarily with angels, but I do get information from spirit guides, and I have since taken coursework, and I receive messages from departed loved ones, which some people know as a medium. I don't call myself a medium because that's not my strong suit, but when I am doing readings for people, sometimes I do have departed loved ones that come through. And so I perceive information in a variety of ways, because some people aren't really familiar with how that works. So just to kind of give a brief overview of that is there's something called the clairs, which are the ways of perceiving unseen information or information from the spirit realms. So I have clairvoyance, which sometimes people have heard of that and are more familiar with that term, but it means I see things, like I might get visions of things or get visuals in my mind's eye. There's clairaudience, which means I hear things. There's clairsentience, which means I feel things. And then there is claircognizance, which is it just sort of drops in my head and I just know things. So it's kind of almost like a telepathy. So there's really, it sounds kind of woo-woo to some people if they're not familiar with it, but there is actually in kind of the spiritual circles, these clairs are sort of known as the way you sort of learn how to perceive information, and they can be taught.
Yeah, what's interesting is we've talked about this before, and I find the idea of the clairs really fascinating, but it never occurred to me that I bet a lot of people are experiencing these things and just call it like intuition, or my gut told me, X, Y, or Z.
Yeah. And I mean, it is basically the same thing. It's just sort of delving a little deeper to kind of put terms and labels to it, right? It is all definitely intuition and guidance and all of that. It just is helping. Like my friend Michelle, when I first channeled the book that I wrote, she asked me, how does it work? What are the mechanics? Like, she's a person who wants to get to the nitty gritty. And so when you break it down and you talk about the clairs, then people can understand, if I really want to develop my own skills, these are the ways in which, I can do it, is by developing these skills. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing when you drill down into any topic that you know, like, oh, this concept is cool, but no, there's a structure that you can learn and there's a way to learn it on purpose and not by accident. So
Yeah.
I think that's cool. Um, okay, so you gave us a little bit about your background and being in the banking industry. Do you mind telling us about the experience that you had that kind of got you started in this line of work?
Yeah. So I have always been interested in all things spiritual, like just, interested in past lives. I would read all kinds of books. I was curious. Edgar Casey's ARE, the Association for, he was kind of America's best known psychic. Like I've read some of his books and I've just always kind of dabbled in it. I would do Reiki and I saw a medium. And then through this medium in September of 2017, I went on a retreat, which was learning to connect with guides and angels. And it was really powerful. It was a weekend down in Cambridge, Maryland. And they did this meditation where you could meet your guardian angel. And I remember I just bawled like a baby. This overwhelming sense of love that I had never felt before. And I'm getting kind of chills thinking about it now. Just this, like I just started to cry, like this feeling of love that overwhelmed me. And so so I wanted to know more. So I started taking all kinds of classes, which, like we talked about, Jen, you can learn these things and people don't think of, being able to connect with guides and angels or being a medium or anything like that is something you can learn. People think, oh, you must be born with that. Well, I was not someone as a child who had visions or who saw ghosts or, some people will talk about they've had these gifts since they were little. I actually was interested in learning, and I took courses to figure out how to do it because it was a passion. It was like, I joke, I'm like a kid with dinosaurs. So I was taking so many courses. I was working full time, but I took an Intuition University course with a woman named Sarah Wiseman. It was like 2 semesters I took with her. I took a psychic development course, which was maybe a 6 or 8 week course. And then, and we did a year, once a month for a year, kind of met as a group and had different psychic development topics. And then the biggest thing that kind of sparked my growth was my 22-month angelic healer certification course. And that's when I really started to connect with my guardian angel, which really opened up my gifts to connect with the angels. And then now I still am continuing to learn because I still feel like I still have more to learn. I still want to develop my skills. And so I'm taking something called Lightworker School with a woman named Tracy Gazelle, who is in Canada. And it's very powerful. I'm learning different things I didn't know, like there's an archangel for each of the chakras. And, so I'm learning all kinds of things that I still didn't know. So it's just, it's a work in progress. So, but I just love to keep learning because this is my passion. So yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. If I ever meet someone who thinks that they know everything there is to know about a topic, I don't want to work with that person. Like that's just arrogance. There's always new things to learn about something.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so how did that shift from being something that you just wanted to learn more about, your version of dinosaurs and little kids, to, hey, I think this could actually be a business model?
Yeah. So my angel teacher, Karen Tumaz, has a business in Bensalem, Pennsylvania, it's like a spiritual center where she offers all kinds of courses and she offers readings and workshops, and she's a wonderful teacher. And so as part of this certification, the last 6 months, it's a practicum where you actually have to give readings and give workshops before she will graduate you. She wants to make sure you know what you're doing. And so, because she's very ethical, which is understandable. And I got to tell you, it was in January, of this year, actually, that was the last 6 months of the course that I had to start giving readings. And I was a little freaked out, like, how am I going to do this? Like, I had been getting messages, but I didn't really sort of trust myself. And then I started to give the readings, and people were just so moved and touched and like talked about how impactful it was in their lives. And I just, my heart, I could just cry thinking about it. I just helping people in a way that helps them improve their lives is so powerful. And so, and then I started to get confidence because I would share things with them. They're like, how did you know that? I'm like, well, the spirit team told me to say this, and so I just fell in love with helping people in that way. And then I had taught in the Masters of Social Work program at Widener University. And so when I started teaching the workshops, it was really great to start helping people learn to build their own connection with their guardian angel. So rather than just being a conduit, which I love doing, I love sharing with people the information that I get, but my ultimate goal is to help people have that connection themselves. And so, so doing more coaching, in-depth coaching, and then doing the workshops is really great. So yeah. So
quick clarification. You said this year, but you're talking 2020, right?
oh yes, I'm sorry, 2020. Yes.
No, that's okay. I just want people to know she hasn't been doing this for 2 weeks. That would be an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah.
It's been a year.
So it's been a year. So I've actually, so I have been sort of I've been delving into this for over 3 years now. So it's kind of like I have the 22-month certification and I have other certifications. So it's like it's definitely like a master's degree that I have in learning to, it's definitely equivalent to that. But I've actually been practicing since January. So it's been 1 year. So actually it's my anniversary.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exciting. Yeah. We didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Celebration. Okay. Well, on a less exciting topic, what are some of the obstacles that you've come up against?
Yeah, well, definitely in the beginning, it was learning to trust myself. And it's funny, it's across the board with all the people who do this work. Like Sarah Wiseman, who is an excellent teacher. She has global clients and a huge business. She talks about how she was so freaked out in the beginning to do readings for people because you just don't want to, steer people wrong. And, you just end up, there's a lot of fear sort of in the beginning to make sure you're doing things right because these are people's lives. It's kind of like when I was in social work, learning to be a counselor, it's a lot to take on, it's a lot of responsibility. And so, I guess for me, that has been an obstacle, just kind of not trusting myself. And then I'm very open about this. And I think this back, and I'm on my website about this, that in 2007, I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder because I started to have some spiritual experiences then. And so they would tell you in the psychiatric realm that if you are feeling like you have a special relationship with God or spirit, that's delusional. And so that was sort of a framework that I had taken in, and it was really hard for me to overcome that. And working with all of these spiritual teachers who I worked with who have no mental health diagnosis, but they are talking to angels and guides and experiencing past lives and all these other things all the time. And they reassured me regularly that yes, you're receiving messages. And then when I started giving readings and would get confirmation from other people, so for example, I would say something like, okay, I'm, the departed loved one is telling me pearl necklace. What does that mean to you? And they said, oh, and it was her best friend. And her best friend had just given her a pearl necklace before she died. So, so that's just one example, but, having that evidence, and just more practice and the feedback from people has helped me feel more reassured. But one of the obstacles in the beginning was definitely trusting myself. But it's, yeah. And other people, like I said, it's a very common thing because in our world, people think it's hard to fathom, right? That you can, have spiritual connections. But the more I'm surrounded by other people who are doing the same thing as me and receiving the same type of information, I'm like, oh, okay. And it's very reassuring.
Yeah. Well, and I won't talk too much about religion because I'm not a good candidate to do it, but I feel like there is kind of a catch-22, right? Where we have a lot of faith around us and people believe a lot of different things, but if there was to be a spiritual experience that happened in your real life, you would just blow it off. You would never believe that could be a real part of your faith. And it's weird. It's weird that there's this disconnect between our daily material lives and what so many of us believe.
Yeah.
So being kind of an outsider to faith, I always look at that and wonder why that is, right?
Right. Well, it's a really interesting point you bring up because if you look at these, I had seen some information about surveys and things, and the majority of people do believe in a higher power. The majority of people do believe in angels. And actually, I had seen something recently where they did a survey, and it was like 33% of people have had some sort of spiritual or mystical experience that they could not explain, but generally they do not talk about it, like whether they felt like a guardian angel intervened when they could have possibly been killed, or another person just said, again, it was in outside in nature and just got this overwhelming sense of love, that struck him. And yeah, so it's just funny. People have these experiences, but they don't want to talk about it because, again, in our culture, people will label that if you're having these experiences, they will label it as sometimes as mental illness. And so people don't want to share about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and kind of on that note, have you come up against people being skeptical and questioning your experiences? And if so, how have you handled that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. What I find, which is quite surprising, is that people generally have not questioned my experience. They have told me stories. They will come to me and be like, "Well, I've never told anybody this, but I had a near-death experience once, and and I felt myself go out of my body, and I never told anybody about it because I didn't want them to think I was crazy." Or I had definitely another person who told me about his guardian angel, or well, he had this experience where he was going to be hit. He was worked in construction and was going to be hit by a 2x4, and all of a sudden he knew he needed to move out of the way, and he moved, and then this 2x4 like came crashing down, or whatever, something came crashing down, and he's like, I always thought it was an angel that helped me, and so people will start telling me these stories, and so or just they'll say things like, I've always been so interested in the spiritual world, this is so cool, so it's actually been more interest than skepticism that I've experienced, which has been it's been fun.
Yeah, that's great. And maybe that'll be reassuring for other people who are thinking about starting a non-traditional business.
Yeah.
What kind of tips would you have for someone who wants to do something that might be difficult to explain? And actually, we'll use Heather as an example because she's here in this call. So as a mindfulness and self-compassion coach, or someone who teaches something that people might not be familiar with already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for me, I just feel like it's living your passion and your purpose and being authentic. And so, and sort of telling our stories, I feel like people really, relate to personal stories. And so when I tell my story about how, I just had this experience and it drew me into the line of work, and, and now my goal is just to help others with it. And so I think my advice to other people would just be live your passion, and if you are enthusiastic about something, then and I personally believe in divine guidance, and that if this is what is meant for you for your path, the doors will open, and I learned in my experience to actually ask for divine support, and so the doors can open even more quickly because we have free will, you have to ask for help and support. So I would encourage people, if they do have some sort of faith or are open to this, to actually ask your divine spiritual team to say, hey, I'm open to, to doing something new and different. And would you help me and guide me and lead me and provide me with opportunities and synchronicities and open the doors for me that are meant to be opened? And that's what I did. And that's how, that's how I published my book, and I found my publisher and found the teachers. I mean, people are shocked at the people I've found to teach me, and they have, miraculously come into my path because it's been, in my mind, divine intervention. So yeah.
Yeah. So I might actually build on that if you don't mind me.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So yes to everything Michelle said. And I'm not a very religious person, but this past year when I started following like the little clues that life was putting in front of me, like, oh, I have this friend, oh, she wants to collaborate, let's see where this goes. And I started being more open-minded and like following the opportunities that were opening up in front of me. Things really came together, and like this has all been formed within the last year, just kind of following hints and trusting my gut and being willing to try new things. Yeah. So, I have this full-time job, I can't leave this security. I get that. I totally get that. You don't have to quit right away. You can start connecting with people. You can go to networking events. You can find other people who will have resources that will help you. Like, you could just get out there and do things and try things and see what feels right.
Yeah, I think that's so great, because like with me, I worked in banking the whole 3 years that I was going through these certification programs and doing all this research. Like, I honestly did not go into this thinking, oh, I'm going to make this a profession. Like, I think somewhere deep down inside, I knew that I would, but it was not in my awareness at all. I was just following my heart and following the things that I was passionate about. And I would meet these people and I would say, oh, maybe I'll take this class, or, oh, maybe I'll talk to this person. And like you said, following sort of the breadcrumb trail and being open-minded. And then it was, in May of this year, that I actually left my full-time job when I finally felt like, okay, I'm ready to really make this a business. But it was, it definitely took a solid 3 years before I, could evolve it into being a business. So yeah.
Yeah. I just want you to know that Anna Jean Yavanishan is saying very nice things about you on Facebook. She says, Michelle is the real deal. She's amazing.
Oh, thank you, Anna.
Okay, well, if anyone has any questions on Facebook, you have a couple minutes to get them in. Otherwise, we're going to start winding down. Michelle, tell us about your business goals. What do you have going on and what ideas for the future?
Yeah, so with divine intervention and following the breadcrumb trails, kind of along those lines, I'm getting new guidance, which is to use my business and my social work. I miss my social work piece, really. I love the divine guidance piece for sure, but I want to marry all of my experiences together. And so my vision is to start the Gibraltar Center for Spirituality, Healing, and Research, which would be a place that would be a spiritually guided, trauma-informed community center that would help people who are having sort of, what social workers would call problems with living. So it could be a diagnosed mental illness, or it could just be, not feeling settled in your life and feeling like you need to be on a different path, or maybe you're just struggling in your relationships, whatever is happening, to provide a community place where people can go and receive traditional therapy and clinical social work type support, but then also have things like guardian angel classes and, have mindfulness techniques, have trauma-informed yoga. And then I would love to have, healthy nutrition and a public garden. And so I have sort of a vision, and I don't know how it's being used yet, but if it's meant to be this location, it will come together. There's a place in Wilmington that is a kind of it's a sort of an old decrepit mansion with gardens to it, called Gibraltar, that is not being, I'm not sure how it's currently being used, but I could envision a place like that with having meeting rooms to have support groups, and then having individual treatment rooms, and also including things like Reiki, astrology, numerology. So we're using traditional methods, but also non-traditional methods to help people find out who they are, what their passions are, and to live the life of their dreams, and to have the support that they need in order to do that. So that's my vision. It's a big one. It's a really big one. But I do have a history of, I worked for 5 years at Widener University, and I had written a number of grants. I ran a welfare to work program for 4 years, which was my passion. It was like a women's empowerment program. And we got grant funding for that. And we really did a very holistic sort of approach. We didn't have the spirituality component, which is what I would add now. But I really see it as a place for the community to come together and support each other, so that, again, I always talk about live the life of your dreams and feel nurtured and loved and supported. And so kind of our slogan is, our hallmark is love. And I had you working on the slogan, to love and be loved. I feel like at the core, that's what we're all aiming for, is to love and be loved. And I want to provide a place where people can have that and feel that. And then when they have that love, and then you can live your passion and feel nurtured and supported to do that. So you can tell I get all jazzed up. But
yeah. Which is great, right? Do what lights you up inside.
Yeah.
That is super exciting. And I am glad that I get to be in your life and I get to watch as this unfolds.
Thank you.
So for, I guess, our Facebook community, for anyone watching this on Facebook, how can people in our group best support you?
Yeah, so right now I'm calling it the Stone Soup Project, which is the idea that it takes a village, and we're creating a soup starting with just putting a stone in the pot, which the stone in the pot right now is, there's a little children's story if you want to look it up.
I think I have that.
Right now we're putting the stone in the pot right now, which is the vision, which is the idea that we could have this place in our community, and that it could be a model for, across the world and in our country. And so this is the stone. And so it's going to take a village. So so if you are interested in being part of this, if you have a business that might be connected to this, like I would envision it being a place where people could essentially, COVID era is hard, but like, it would be partnerships where some people would be full-time staff and some people could lease space. But if you have a business that is something that could be related to this, or people who might be interested in supporting this or collaborating on this, I am trying to bring the villagers together. So so if you're interested or someone, please reach out to me. So via email. Can I share my email address?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So it's me at michelledmccann.com. So it's Michelle with 2 L's, dmccann.com. And so email me. I would be delighted to hear from you. And I have some people that are already starting to express some interest. And I have been asking my divine spiritual team, like if you really, and I use the word God because I do talk to God, and some people, call it source or, universe, different things. But I have been praying that if this is really meant to happen, bring my helpers. So if you think you're a helper, reach out to me and let's talk.